Ethan stood quietly near the far end of the training yard. Tall aliens with bright-colored skin, glowing eyes, or scaled arms moved past him, talking in their own languages. He felt like a small tree in a forest of giants. It was his first month at the Galactic Defense Academy, and he was the only human here. Most cadets ignored him. Some stared. A few whispered. The academy was floating in deep space, orbiting a neutral planet. It trained the best fighters, leaders, and peacekeepers from across the galaxy. Only one human was allowed to join this year, and that was Ethan. Earth's Alliance hoped he would make friends, learn new things, and show that humans could be trusted allies. But so far, Ethan felt more like a ghost than a guest. He kept his head down and did his work, trying to stay out of trouble. That changed the day Chiari walked in. She was tall, graceful, and had dark silver skin that shimmered under the twin suns. Her sharp eyes scanned the class like a warrior checking for threats. Her voice was calm, but it had strength behind it. Her people, the Vixari, were known as proud fighters who respected strength above all. No one dared to speak against them until today. The combat theory class had just begun. The teacher, a soft-voiced alien with 4 eyes, was asking for examples of strategy from different species. A loud voice spoke up. Human males, Chiari said clearly, are irresistible. The class went silent. Everyone turned. Even the teacher blinked. Ethan froze. A tall green-skinned cadet laughed. Is that a joke? They are weak, slow. Their bones break like twigs. Chiari didn't smile. She stood straight and added, they are clever, calm under pressure. And unlike many here, they did not fight just to show off. They fight to protect. Ethan blinked, unsure what to do. Had she just defended him? No one ever spoke for him before. Not here. After class, Chiari approached him. I hope I didn't embarrass you, she said softly. Double quotes no, he said, surprised. Thank you. I've watched you, she said. You think before you act. You don't try to show off. That's rare here. Ethan nodded. I just want to do my best. Then come train with me, she said. That afternoon, they met in the practice hall. It was wide, with walls that changed shape based on what you needed. Chiari chose hand-to-hand training. Ethan was nervous. Her people were faster and stronger than any human. He didn't want to look weak. They circled each other. Chiari moved smoothly, almost like she was dancing. Ethan stayed low, remembering his training back on Earth. She struck first, a light blow. He dodged, then blocked the next one. Slowly, he began to understand her rhythm. Instead of matching strength, he used timing. He ducked, turned, and used her motion against her. Once, he even got close to knocking her off balance. After 20 minutes, they stopped. Both were breathing hard, but smiling. You learn fast. Chiari said, you go easy on me. He replied, no, she said. I respect your mind. You move with purpose. Many warriors forget that. Word spread quickly. Soon, other cadets noticed Ethan. They started to whisper again, but this time with curiosity. Why was the Vixari girl one of the strongest students training with the human? And why did she speak of him with respect? A few laughed. Some grew jealous. 1 or 2 tried to challenge him during drills. Chiari always stood nearby, watching. Later that week, during mealtime, a group of alien cadets came to their table. What is it you see in him? Asked one. Folding his arms, I see what others miss. Chiari replied, you really believe what you said, that human males are irresistible? Chiari leaned forward. I don't just believe it, she said. I'll prove it. The table went quiet. Ethan looked at her, unsure if she was serious, but her eyes were steady. He didn't know what she meant yet, not fully. But deep down, a part of him felt something new. Not just pride but connection. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he didn't feel alone, and that was the beginning. Ethan woke up early the next day, still thinking about what Chiari had said. She didn't just defend him in class, she stood by his side when others questioned her. No one had ever done that for him before, especially not someone like her. When he entered the training yard, he found Chiari already there, moving through a set of warm-up drills. Her movements were sharp and controlled, like a warrior preparing for real battle. She looked at him and nodded. "You're early," she said. "You too," he replied. They trained for an hour, running through different forms. Tiari showed him new moves from her culture, and Ethan taught her some simple tactics used by Earth soldiers. It surprised them both how well their styles worked together. They weren't just training, they were learning from each other. Later, as they walked toward the main hall, Ethan noticed more eyes following them. Some cadets gave strange looks, others whispered in low voices. He felt uneasy, but Tiari walked calmly beside him, ignoring the noise. In the mess hall, a tall red-skinned cadet named Jorax stepped in front of them. "You think you're better than us now, Tiari?" he asked. "No," she answered. "I simply know who I respect." Jorax looked at Ethan. "This human doesn't belong here. He's weak." Tiari didn't raise her voice. She simply said, "Challenge him, then. But follow the academy rules." Ethan's heart beat faster. "A public challenge in front of everyone?" Jorax scoffed. "Why should I? He'll break in one strike. Then you have nothing to lose." Tiari said, her eyes firm. That evening, the combat ring was set. It was meant to be friendly, no serious injuries allowed. Still, it drew a large crowd. Many cadets wanted to see if the human could survive against someone like Jorax. Ethan stood across the ring, calm on the outside but nervous inside. Jorax was a foot taller and much stronger. Ethan knew he had no chance if he fought head-on. He needed to think. When the match started, Jorax rushed forward, swinging wide. Ethan dodged, letting the larger alien burn energy. He moved lightly, staying out of reach, waiting for a mistake. The crowd grew quiet. They expected a quick end, but Ethan kept moving. His timing was perfect. He rolled under a strike and tapped Jorax's leg. Jorax stumbled, angry now. Ethan stayed focused. Finally, Jorax made a big mistake. He charged too fast, and Ethan stepped aside, guiding him off balance. Jorax hit the ground with a heavy thud. The bell rang. Match over. Tiari stepped into the ring and helped Ethan stand tall. "Well done," she said with a proud smile. The crowd clapped slowly. Not everyone cheered, but no one laughed either. The human had proved he wasn't weak, and more importantly, he had done it with skill, not anger. After the match, Tiari and Ethan sat under the light of the moons near the edge of the academy garden. "You could have gotten hurt," she said quietly. "I knew the risk," Ethan replied. "But I couldn't just stay silent, not after what you did for me." Tiari looked at him for a long moment. "You're different," she said. "Not just because you're human, but because you fight in a way others don't, not for pride, but for purpose." Ethan looked down. "Back on Earth, I was just another face. I came here to show we're more than people think. You've helped me more than anyone else." Tiari nodded slowly. "I told them human males are irresistible," she said, her voice soft. "And I meant it, not because of looks or strength, but because of heart." Ethan felt his face grow warm. He wasn't sure what to say. Before he could speak, a message pinged on Tiari's wrist. Calm. She checked it and frowned. "The High Commander is coming," she said. "My mother." Ethan blinked. "Your mother is the High Commander." Tiari nodded. "And she's not going to be pleased about this." The air inside the academy changed the moment the High Commander arrived. Her ship landed with a deep hum, and several officers stood in perfect lines as she stepped out. Her armor was dark gold, shining with marks of rank. She had the same silver skin as Tiari, but her presence was sharper, heavier. No one dared to speak when she passed by. Ethan watched from a distance, standing near one of the tall pillars by the training hall. He saw Tiari standing at attention, face calm, posture perfect, but he could sense the tension in her shoulders. The High Commander walked straight to her daughter. "You called for me?" she asked in a cold tone. "No," Tiari replied respectfully. "You came on your own." "I received reports, strange ones," her mother said, "about you and a human male." Tiari didn't flinch. "They are true. So you admit it?" "I do." The commander's eyes narrowed. She turned her head and finally noticed Ethan nearby. Her gaze locked on him like a weapon. "Come here, human," she said. Ethan took a breath and stepped forward. He kept his eyes steady. Yes, Commander. My daughter speaks of you often, but I don't see what's special, she said bluntly. You're small, fragile, and your kind has barely joined galactic space. Ethan didn't argue. Instead, he said calmly, you don't have to see it. I didn't come here to impress anyone. Tiari raised an eyebrow at his answer. Her mother narrowed her eyes. Then why are you here? To learn, to prove we belong, to help where I can, Ethan replied. The commander looked at her daughter. And you think this is the kind of male worthy of your bond? I do, Tiari said simply. There was a long silence. Then the commander said, prove it. Tiari and Ethan both looked confused. Prove he's worthy. I'll allow you both to take part in the trial of balance. Several nearby officers gasped. Mother. That trial hasn't been used in years, Tiari said. Because no one dared, her mother answered. Until now. Later that evening, Tiari explained the trial to Ethan. They sat on a small hill overlooking the academy dome. It's not a fight, she said. It's a shared test. Two people enter a memory maze created by their own minds. It shows your fears, your truths. If you survive together, the bond is accepted by my people. What happens if we fail? Ethan asked. We wake up, she said. Alone. He thought for a while. I'll do it. Are you sure? She asked gently. Yes, he said. I'm not afraid of being seen. Not by you. The next morning, the trial chamber was opened. It was an old part of the academy, built with ancient tech that connected minds through light and thought. Tiari and Ethan stood inside the ring. Glowing bands formed around their arms. A deep hum filled the air, and their eyes closed. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was standing in a ruined city. It was his hometown. But broken buildings in pieces, the sky gray. He heard crying. He turned and saw a small child trapped under debris. He rushed forward and pulled the child out. The child looked up and said, Why weren't you there before? Ethan froze. He blinked again. And now he was in a room filled with loud voices. Angry commanders, laughing cadets, all saying, He doesn't belong. Ethan covered his ears, but the voices came from inside. Then he saw Tiari walking through the mist toward him. Don't hide, she said. I'm here. She held his hand. And together they stepped into her memories. Now, it was her trial. Tiari stood before a council of her people. They accused her of shame, weakness, and dishonor. A warrior does not fall for a soft one. One voice shouted, You should choose strength. Ethan stepped beside her and said, Real strength is staying loyal to your heart. The storm around them broke. Light filled the space. Their eyes opened in the real world at the same time. They were still holding hands. The commander stood in silence, watching. Finally, she nodded once. You passed. Tiari looked at Ethan with quiet joy. He smiled back. This isn't over. The commander warned. Others will question you, test you, mock you. Are you ready for that? Ethan said, I've been tested every day since I arrived. This time, I won't be alone. Tiari squeezed his hand. Never again. The days after the trial were strange for Ethan. He had passed the trial of balance with Tiari, and their bond was now known to everyone in the academy. But things had changed. While many cadets respected him for surviving the trial, there were others who were not as accepting. Whispers followed him wherever he went. They called him the human warrior, or the one who passed the impossible trial. Some cadets even went as far as to avoid him completely. Others came to challenge him in practice, wanting to test the human who had earned Tiari's respect. But Ethan stayed calm. He had always believed in doing his best without fighting for praise. Now, he just focused on being better than yesterday. Tiari, meanwhile, faced her own challenges. Some of her fellow Vixari questioned her loyalty to their people. How can you trust a human? One of her oldest friends asked. They are barely part of the galaxy. Tiari didn't answer immediately. She only looked at her friend and said, A true warrior knows that strength comes in many forms. He fights not just for his own people, but for the truth. Her friend shook his head, clearly unhappy with her answer, but he didn't press further. Despite the challenges, Tiari and Ethan grew closer. They spent hours training together, practicing combat, and learning more about each other's worlds. Ethan taught Tiari how humans viewed family, loyalty, and honor in return. Tiari shared the traditions of her people, explaining the value of strength, honor, and unity. One evening, Tiari invited Ethan to join her in the academy's main hall for a special ceremony. It was a rite of passage for the older cadets, a moment where they would pledge their loyalty to their people and their future roles in the galaxy. Ethan stood at the edge of the hall, watching as Vixari cadets walked up one by one, their heads held high. When it was Tiari's turn, Ethan noticed the slight nervousness in her steps. She didn't show it, of course, but he could tell. Tiari stood before the council of the Vixari elders. "I swear my loyalty to my people," she said in their language. "I will protect them, honor them, and fight for their future." The elders nodded in approval, but one of them, an older Vixari with sharp eyes, glanced toward Ethan. "And what of him?" the elder asked, his voice loud enough for the entire hall to hear. Everyone turned to look at Ethan. I took a deep breath. "He is part of my future," she said. "He is not an outsider. He is my equal." There was a long silence. Ethan could feel the weight of their gazes on him, but he stood tall, not looking away. He wasn't going to hide anymore. After a moment, the elder nodded. "We see," he said. "But the galaxy is vast and dangerous. There are many who will not accept this bond. Are you ready to face that?" Tiari didn't hesitate. "I am." And with that, she walked back to Ethan, her face calm but proud. Later, as they stood outside the hall, Ethan looked at her. "You didn't have to say all that. You could have stayed quiet." "I couldn't," she replied. "Not when it's the truth." They walked together in silence for a while. The stars twinkled above them, and the cool breeze of space flowed gently. Finally, Ethan spoke. "Are you scared?" he asked. "Sometimes," she said, looking up at the sky. "But fear doesn't control me. It never has. It's just, I don't know if we'll ever be fully accepted." Ethan said, "I'm human. We're new to this whole galaxy. And you're Vixari. Your people are strong. What if they never truly accept me?" Tiari stopped walking and turned to him. "Acceptance doesn't come from others," she said. "It comes from within. We decide who we are, and we decide who we want beside us." Ethan nodded slowly, thinking. About her words, she was right. Acceptance from others didn't matter if they already knew who they were and what they stood for. If they were sure of themselves, then it didn't matter who accepted them. As they walked back to the dorms, the future seemed uncertain. There would be more challenges, more doubts. But as long as they stood together, Ethan felt a quiet confidence growing within him. Perhaps they didn't need the galaxy's approval. Perhaps they just needed to stay true to themselves. And with that thought, he knew that whatever came next, they would face it side by side. Days passed, and the academy buzzed with new energy. The arrival of the High Commander had caused a ripple. But soon, life returned to its regular pace. Yet for Ethan and Tiari, things were far from normal. They knew the challenges they faced would continue: more doubts, more tests, more people questioning their bond. But they also knew they couldn't change the way they felt. Tiari's position as a respected cadet remained strong, though some still cast her curious looks. Some of her fellow Vixari cadets openly challenged Ethan during their training sessions. They would test him, try to throw him off balance in combat, eager to see if he was truly worthy of standing beside their strongest warrior. One day, Ethan found himself in the training ring again, facing a large Vixari named Kor. He was a seasoned fighter, tall and built like a rock. Ethan had fought stronger opponents before, but this time felt different. This wasn't just a match for skill, it was a challenge to his place here. A challenge to his bond with Tiari. "Let's see if you're worth the trust of our finest warrior," Kor said, his voice cold. "I'm not here to prove anything to you," Ethan replied. "I'm here to show that humans have something valuable to offer." The fight began. Kor charged forward, using his superior size to try and overpower Ethan. But Ethan was quick on his feet, sidestepping and dodging his blows. He knew his speed and agility were his advantages. But the longer the fight went on, the more exhausted Ethan became. Core was relentless, and Ethan could feel his body starting to tire. I stood at the edge of the ring, watching intently. She believed in him, but even she couldn't deny that Core's strength was overwhelming. Still, Ethan kept moving, kept dodging, until finally, Core made a mistake. His wide swing left him open, and Ethan swiftly moved in, landing a clean strike. To his opponent's side. The crowd went silent. No one had expected the human to land a hit. KOR. Though surprised, quickly regained his composure. But his EXP Russian had changed. He no longer looked at Ethan as a weakling. Instead, he saw him as a worthy opponent. After a few more moments of intense fighting, the match ended with no clear victor. Both Ethan and Core stood, panting and sweating, but neither had landed the decisive blow. "You're tougher than I thought," Core said, stepping back and extending a hand. Ethan, still breathing hard, took the hand. "Thanks," he said simply. The crowd began to murmur. The respect for Ethan was growing, even among those who had doubted him. Cherry smiled proudly, her heart swelling with pride. This was the man she had chosen. The man who was proving that humans could hold their own in the most difficult of situations. After the match, as the sun began to set, Cherry walked alongside Ethan in the quiet academy gardens. The evening air was cool, and the stars above shone brightly. "You were incredible today," Cherry said softly. Ethan smiled, though he was still catching his breath. "I just kept moving and listening to what you taught me." Cherry's eyes softened. "You've taught me a lot too. You've shown me how to trust more, how to see things differently." They walked together for a while, enjoying the calm after the storm of the fight. But there was still a sense of tension in the air. Their bond was growing stronger. But they both knew that there were more trials ahead. As they reached the end of the garden, Cherry stopped and turned to Ethan. "My mother will be back soon," she said quietly. "I know," Ethan replied. "I'm ready for whatever she throws at me." "It's not just her," Cherry said. "There are others too. The council, some of my people. They will test you. They will try to see if you're really worthy of being with me." "I'll face it," Ethan said firmly. "I'll face it for you, for us." Cherry looked at him with a mix of love and fear in her eyes. "But it's not just about proving ourselves. It's about showing everyone that what we have is real. That it's more than just a passing moment. It's something worth fighting for." Ethan reached out and took her hand, his grip strong and reassuring. "We will, together." Cherry smiled softly, and for the first time in a while, she allowed herself to feel a sense of peace. They didn't need anyone's approval, not really. What mattered was what they believed in. What mattered was the bond they had created, and the future they were building. But just as they were about to turn back to the academy, a voice interrupted their moment. "There you are," said the High Commander, her figure appearing at the entrance to the garden. "I've been looking for you both." Cherry and Ethan turned to face her, their hands still intertwined. "Mother," Cherry said with a calm voice. "What do you want?" The High Commander's gaze shifted between them. Her expression was unreadable. "I want to see if you truly understand what you're getting into, and if he can handle what comes next." Cherry's grip tightened on Ethan's hand. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was ready for whatever challenge came next. "We're ready," she said firmly. And Ethan nodded, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. The next morning, the air around the academy felt tense. Ethan could sense the change, even though everything looked the same. The cadets were quieter than usual, and the whispers seemed sharper, more urgent. Cherry didn't seem affected, but Ethan knew something was coming. He just wasn't sure what. Ty and Ethan met outside the training hall, where they had trained together countless times before. This time, though, there was a new tension in the air. Cherry was standing taller, more focused than usual. Ethan could see the worry in her eyes, but she hid it well. "What's going on?" Ethan asked, his voice low. "Today," Cherry said, "my mother will challenge you. Not in combat, but in a test of character." "A test of character," Ethan echoed, feeling a bit uneasy. "What does that mean?" "It means," Cherry said, her voice steady, that you will be asked to prove yourself. Not with your strength, but with your mind, your heart, your values. Ethan took a deep breath. He had faced challenges before, but this felt different. This wasn't about fighting in a ring or showing his skills. It was about who he was as a person and whether he was worthy of standing by Tiari's side. "I'll do my best," he said. Tyr smiled at him. "I know you will. But remember, this is more than just about winning. It's about showing them that what we have is real." Just then, a voice called from behind them. "You are both needed at the council hall." It was the voice of one of the academy officers. Tyr nodded, and together, she and Ethan walked toward the hall. As they walked, Ethan couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He wasn't just facing a challenge, he was facing the entire Council of Vixari Elders, and his bond with Tiari was on the line. When they arrived, the council hall was filled with cadets, officers, and elders. The room was vast, with tall windows looking out into the stars. The walls were lined with ancient symbols, each one telling the story of the Vixari people. At the front of the room, sitting in a high chair, was the High Commander. Her gaze was fixed on Ethan, cold and unreadable. "You have been called here today," the High Commander said, her voice loud and firm, "to prove that your bond with my daughter is more than just a fleeting moment. To prove that it is worthy of the legacy of the Vixari." Ethan stood tall, trying not to let the pressure overwhelm him. Tiari stood beside him, her presence a calming force. The High Commander continued, "We will test your ability to lead, to protect, to understand what it means to stand by one of us, not as an outsider, but as an equal." The first test was simple. Ethan was asked to lead a small team of cadets in a mock battle. It wasn't a fight to the death, but it was a test of his ability to make decisions under pressure. He was given a scenario where his team was trapped and had to find a way out. Ethan quickly assessed the situation, coming up with a plan that relied on his team's strengths rather than their weaknesses. He worked quickly, directing each cadet to take specific positions. As the exercise ended, the cadets gathered around, and the High Commander nodded. "Your strategy was effective," she said, "but that was only the beginning." The second test was more difficult. Ethan was placed in a simulated negotiation with representatives from several different species, each with their own demands and concerns. The challenge was not to win over everyone, but to find a solution that balanced all interests without betraying anyone's trust. It was a long, tense negotiation, but Ethan kept his focus. He listened to each representative, taking into account their fears, desires, and needs. He didn't rush to offer solutions, but instead, he asked the right questions, guiding the conversation toward a peaceful resolution. By the end, the representatives agreed on a compromise that satisfied everyone. When the simulation ended, Tiari stood beside him, her eyes shining with pride. The High Commander watched, her expression still unreadable. "You passed," she said simply. But then, the final test came. The High Commander turned to Ethan, her eyes sharp and serious. "Now," she said, "I want to know why you're here. Why do you fight for my daughter? Why do you believe in this bond?" Ethan didn't hesitate. He looked directly at the High Commander and said, "I'm here because Tiari is everything I want in a partner. She's strong, loyal, and she believes in me. I fight for her because I believe in us. I don't need anyone else's approval, but I'm willing to fight for what we have, because what we have is real." There was a long silence. The High Commander's gaze softened. She looked at Tiari, who stood tall beside Ethan. Then, without another word, she nodded. "You are worthy," she said, her voice low but sincere. "You have proven yourself human, and you have proven to me that you truly understand what it means to stand beside my daughter." Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had done it. He had proven himself not just to Tiari, but to her people, and most importantly, to himself. Tiari smiled, her hand reaching out to him. "We did it," she said. Ethan took her hand, knowing that this was just the beginning of their journey. The future was still uncertain, but together, they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Weeks passed, and life at the academy slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be. The council had accepted Ethan, and word had spread that the bond between him and Chari was strong and real. They weren't just two individuals from different worlds, they were a team, united by their trust and respect for one another. The whispers from the other cadets started to fade. Some still watched Ethan with curiosity, but there were no more challenges or doubts thrown his way. Instead, he was becoming a part of the academy's rhythm. He trained, he learned, and he even began to teach some of the younger cadets some techniques from Earth that they found useful. I stood by his side through it all. She continued to excel in her training, but now she seemed lighter, happier. It was as if the weight of the world had shifted from her shoulders. She no longer had to defend her bond with Ethan, and that gave her a sense of peace. One evening, as they were walking through the academy's quiet halls after a long day of training, Chari turned to Ethan with a smile. "You've changed," she said softly. "How?" Ethan asked, surprised. "You're more relaxed. Before, you always seemed tense, like you were waiting for the next challenge. But now, you've learned to enjoy the moment." Ethan chuckled. "I guess it's easier when I know I'm not just fighting for myself. I'm fighting for us." Chari's smile widened, and she squeezed his hand. "And you're winning." Just then, a loud sound echoed down the hall. It was the call for the night assembly. Ethan and Chari exchanged a quick glance before heading to the gathering area. The assembly was a regular event at the academy, where cadets and instructors would meet to discuss any important news or events. But tonight, there was something different in the air. Ethan could feel it as they entered the hall. The council was already seated. The High Commander, Chari's mother, was standing at the front. She looked serious, and her gaze scanned the room with authority. "Tonight," she began, "we have a special announcement. The Academy will be sending a team to the Outer Territories for a mission. It is a mission of great importance, and it will test every part of our training. Chari, you have been selected to lead this team." The room was silent. Ethan could see the pride in Chari's eyes, but he also saw the weight of the responsibility she was about to carry. Leading a team was no small task, especially when the mission involved navigating the dangers of the Outer Territories, a region known for its hostile environments and unpredictable dangers. "I am honored," Chari said, standing tall. The High Commander nodded. "And your second in command will be Ethan." The room fell quiet again. Ethan felt a wave of surprise wash over him. He hadn't expected this. Leading a team, even as second in command, was a big responsibility. But standing beside Chari, that was an honor he hadn't anticipated. "Are you ready?" the High Commander asked. Ethan took a deep breath. "I am." Chari turned to him, her eyes full of pride and trust. "Together, we'll face whatever comes." The announcement was met with murmurs of approval from the cadets. But Ethan could see the mixed emotions in the room. Some were excited, others uncertain. Leading a mission in the Outer Territories wasn't something to take lightly. There were risks involved, and not everyone would make it out unscathed. The following days were filled with preparation. Ethan and Chari worked side by side, organizing the team, gathering supplies, and finalizing their strategy. The Outer Territories were far from home, and they would need to be ready for anything. They spent hours in the simulation rooms, testing different strategies and facing mock scenarios. Their bond was stronger than ever, and as they worked together, they grew even more in sync. But despite all the preparation, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the back of his mind. This mission was real, the stakes were high, and he wasn't just fighting for his own survival anymore, he was fighting for the people he cared about. The night before their departure, Chari and Ethan stood on the balcony of the academy, looking out at the stars. "We're ready," Chari said quietly. "I know," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "No matter what happens tomorrow," she said, her gaze softening. "I want you to know that what we've built together is more than just a bond. It's a promise, and I will keep that promise no matter what." Ethan turned to her, his heart full. "I feel the same. We've come this far together. We'll make it through anything." As the stars shone above them, Tiari reached out and took Ethan's hand for the first time since arriving at the academy. Ethan truly felt like he had a place in this galaxy, not just as a human, not just as someone different, but as someone who mattered, someone who belonged. And as they prepared to face whatever lay ahead, they knew they would face it together.